Hey everybody, it's Chris from Slidewheel Racing today, and my video today is going to be on changing the trim sender in a Volvo Duoprop Outdrive. DP-S drive, but it's a 2004 model, and in the literature that I've had, there is some conflicting data around like the process that you need to go through. For example, the climber manual, which is pretty thorough, it talks about the DP-S units need to, you're connecting the sender to a control module. My boat does not have a control module, so my boat follows what's more like the SX process in this particular book. The only difference, as I've figured out between them, or at least that I think, I've not done this before, is related to how precisely you need to set the sender in its, I guess, base setting, where you need to set it to 11 ohms, and it sounds like the control module won't work correctly if you don't have it adjusted just right. In my case, it connects directly to the gauge, so I'm just going to adjust it until the gauge reads level when the outdrive looks to be level while it's sitting on the trailer. And I'll show you how I determined that it was indeed my trim sender and not the gauge. Before you go and change the trim sender, is to make sure that indeed the problem is that you might be having with your trim gauge not working is indeed related to the sender. So right now my drive is all the way up. If I turn the boat on, okay, when we look at my gauge, obviously it's showing that it's up. But if I drive it down, nothing's changing. Okay, so no matter what, my drive is showing all the way up. So let's go over and locate the trim connector in the boat. Right now I have it draped up, so it's easy to find. It's this connector right here, in my case. Okay, so I have the trim connector unplugged, and you can see there's the side that goes out to the sender itself through the transom, and then there's the side that goes into the engine harness. And what we're going to do is we're going to take those two leads that are in there, and we are going to short them together and watch what happens to the gauge. Now, depending upon your boat arrangement, you may need an assistant to help you with this. I'm going to go and sit the camera in front of the gauge, and I'm going to put a jumper across those. As you can see, when I short that together, the gauge jumps to down. So that's how I know that the problem that I have is not to do with my gauge, but it has to do with my sender. Okay, so the first step in taking the trim sender out is to remove this grommet connector from the wire itself. So normally this comes with 3 wires. On my boat, only 2 of them are used. That's why this white one wasn't even in it to begin with. This is what it looks like when you take it out of the grommet. The tool that you use for these looks something like this. In this case, it's like hollow at the end. But what I found is that this is a little mini file back from the old points days. These, I think you can still find these at the hardware store. But the shaft diameter on the end of this file is about the right size that you can put this in, and you can push that connector through. So we'll do that. And you can see it just comes right out. So that's how we take that off. That's the first step. Alright, so the next step, we're going to take off the actual sending unit. That's 2 8mm bolts right there. If you look real carefully, so it's the wire there on the right. There's 2 next to each other. It's the one on the right is the one we've got to fish out. It almost looks like somebody put it in with some sealant. So I'm going to work on fishing this out. I'll take this off and try. Okay, so as I suspected, the clip was not on mine. I took the sender out, I took the bolts off, and then I just kind of pulled firmly on the wire, and and the grommet came through the transom. There was no clip attached. It just was being held in place with some of the RTV. Unfortunately for me, the stainless bolt that was holding it in place decided to break off on me. So I've got a little extra work to get that guy out and clean up that hole, and I'll clean up all this flaking finish for sure before I put it all back together. So before I pull this wire the rest of the way through, I'm going to attach a little fish through so that when I put the new cable in, I can pull it through a lot easier. Okay, so I've attached a piece of string, piece of mason line to the end of the wires, and I'm just going to use this to make it easier to pull the new one back through. So we're going to finish fishing this, pulling this out, and our new string should come with it. Okay, there we go. So we pulled that out. So now we'll attach this string to the new one and pull it back through. Alright, we're back. And I've attached my fishing string to the end of the wire, the new wire of the new sender. And I'm going to add a little bit of RTV gasketing compound to the end of this guy, and then I'm just going to pull it through from the other side. I went inside and I pulled the line through, and it worked perfectly, and I gave it a nice firm tug to get the grommet all the way in there, and I don't think you can really see it. It's kind of tough with the flashlight and the camera here, but it's seated just the way the other one was, all the way in. What I'm going to do is I'm gonna push this on. I'm gonna screw that in right now, and then we'll go inside and we'll hook up the wires. In this case, all I have to do is make sure that those two black wires are connected to the two prongs, and to do so, if I were to fit this in there, you can see that that just means that I need to put them in that hole and that hole. And so what I'm gonna do is I can't do this on camera inside the bilge, but I'm gonna push a little bit of dielectric grease onto these guys to make it slide into the rubber a little better, and then I'm just going to go back to the little end of that file to push that wire in. Okay, I'm back. I got those guys in there. Went in pretty smooth, and because I'm OCD and I don't want a little wire flopping around, I did push the white one into the third terminal. In the end, the tool I used that worked a little bit easier was just a little pick. And I just pushed on. You don't want to push into the wire. I pushed on the end of the connector where it was solid. So now we're going to smear a little dielectric grease inside of there and plug this guy in and then test it. So all plugged in, and I came over here and I turned the key on, and the gauge immediately went to the middle, which was a good sign. And so let's try this guy. We'll go trim down and trim up. Beautiful, beautiful. All right, so there you have it. Now what you do is you'd adjust the sender on the outside with those two screws. You just loosen those up, put the drive at level, and adjust that gauge until the gauge shows level when the drive is level. Tighten it up and you're good to go. Have a good day.